Our very special guest, Leah Herron. This is The Loaded Mic, and I'm Dan Was. As much as groups like Moms Demand Action and Everytown for Gun Safety desperately try to recruit women into their politically driven anti-gun clubs, it would appear their attempts are falling flat. It would seem modern women have decided to take their safety and the safety of their families into their own hands. Now, responsible, smart American women are no longer buying into the notion that the cops will arrive to save you if you're under attack. Women across America are rejecting the fear campaign perpetuated by the small group of anti-Second Amendment, left-wing funded folks who are determined to make people vulnerable through unarmed helplessness. Self-defense is not only for women, it's not the only reason women have entered the ranks of gun ownership at an unprecedented rate. Sport shooting is an area that quickly it's losing its reputation as the boys' club, and firearm training facilities are often found to be owned and run by women. Jan Morgan, founder and CEO of 2A Women, said, quote, "When women get passionate about something, they can move mountains. Women are fired up about their gun rights and are steadily filling the front lines of legislative battles to defend this right," end quote. Annie Oakley would be proud to know that her legacy lives on in the modern-day American woman. I still wouldn't want anyone shooting a cigarette out of my mouth, but as the rumor has it, Annie's husband, Frank Butler, felt quite confident of her shooting skills back in the late 1800s and let her do exactly that. Now let's look at the actual numbers. In 21, a Harvard University study found that nearly half of all gun purchases between 2019 and 2021 were women, resulting in 42% of gun owners in America being women, a 14% rise over the previous 5 years. Now, the total number of women who became gun owners during that 2-year period is almost 3.5 million. In an article by Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, it was said that research found women accounted for about half of all gun purchases between 2019 and 2021, and that new gun owners are more likely to be female. This indicating the trend in firearm purchases moving forward. Now, not surprisingly, the largest spike in gun sales occurred during and shortly after the violent left-wing riots that occurred in several cities across America in 2020. According to a survey conducted by Professor Matt Miller at Northeastern University, between January 2020 and April 21, the number of gun purchases rose from 13.8 million to 16.6 million, almost 50% being women, and approximately 5.4 million brought them into homes that had not previously had them. According to the FBI data, there were 39,695 total background checks initiated with the National Instant Check System in 2020. In other words, millions of folks who never previously chose to own a gun quickly decided to dump the dangerous ideas pushed by the anti-gun lobby. If you put people in danger, they will find a way to defend themselves and their families, regardless of politics or gender. Now, women seem to be leading this effort, regardless of the persistent rhetoric and demonization from anti-Second Amendment activists. We're going to talk about this and many other things with our very special guest, Leah Herron, the national president for 2A Women. Leah, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm great. How are you?
Great. And thanks for being on the show. I've been looking forward to this. We don't get the chance. Well, I mean, we get the chance, but we don't typically talk about women and firearms on a regular basis. So this is a good thing, and because frankly, I mean, I know a lot of my fellow gun owners are women, and surprisingly, when I got into this whole world of Second Amendment rights, I was shocked to see how many women are actually involved. I thought it was the boys' club.
Well, it's
not.
growing. It's growing
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's what I wanted to ask you about. But first, you were, well, now you're the national president for Two Way Women. Our founder, your founder rather, Jan Morgan, our friend, my good friend Jan Morgan, started the organization. And you also head up the legislative division of Two Way Women. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. And you were also a former VP of the Kansas Rifle Association.
Yes.
So tell us how this all came about. Like, how did you get started in this area, I mean, this industry, I guess, and how did you meet up with Jan?
Yeah. Well, I grew up with guns, rifles, shotguns. I grew up in a family of hunters, really never gave much thought to owning a handgun or being trained in a handgun. But along about 2006, 2007, I started blogging about First Amendment and Second Amendment. I started receiving some death threats via email. I don't think any of them were credible, but my husband suggested, hey, why don't you consider getting a handgun? Took my first class, got my concealed carry in Kansas, and it kind of just ballooned from there. I absolutely love shooting. I loved going to the state capitol. I loved fighting for our rights. And even though I'm very saddened to see the things we're having to fight for, I just really liked having a part in making positive changes in Kansas. Then we moved back to Arkansas. We've been here 7 years, and a little over a year ago, I saw that Jan was having a class at her range in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I was going to be passing through the area. It's about 4 hours south for me. And I just thought, hey, I think I'd like to go by and meet Jan. I followed her on Facebook for probably a decade and get a little refresher class, which I did. And that just started a conversation. And she realized that we share a lot of the same passion about the Second Amendment. And sometime toward the end of last year, then I just started doing more work with 2A Women.
Yeah, and I've been to Jan's range. I've shot at her range, and she's got a great facility there.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. And if just a kind of a shout out to Jan Morgan. She's if it wasn't for her, my career probably wouldn't be where it is. She really was instrumental in getting me started with my book series and stuff like that. So she is absolutely the best. We love Jan Morgan. So you started, actually, it sounds like you became a gun owner relatively later in life, not early on, or?
As far as a handgun, yes.
Oh, okay.
I had a 22. I could shoot rifles and shotguns, but it was later when I just didn't really realize the importance of having a handgun. Since then, I've totally changed my thoughts on that. Obviously, I believe and advocate for every single female to not only have, but to carry a gun, to keep it either on them or in arm's reach at all times, because things happen in life, and there's not always going to be a police officer or a husband or someone there to protect you, and we need to take that on for ourselves. In fact, my oldest daughter, she's an oncology nurse, and she just got certified to also be a gun trainer, so we're passing this down in the family as well.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. It's always great to see family members and friends start to take it up, and I was just thinking about something while you were talking about carrying for women. I know even guys have to dress kind of around our gun. We have to make sure that it's concealed properly. In some states, Arkansas, I think it's a little bit different though. You can open carry down there. So here in New York, we have to hide it because we have scaredy cat liberals. If they see a gun, they'll freak out and call the cops. It's awful up here.
Yeah, it doesn't bother people here.
No, it doesn't. Well, last time I was down there, I was carrying a 1911 on my hip, outer, open carry on my hip. It was kind of fun, but it was a novelty for me as a New Yorker to be able to do that, which was kind of neat. But I'm thinking, women, do they carry in their purse? Do they carry on their ankle? What's the best way
You
for
know,
women to carry?
I carried in my purse for a long time until what I've learned in the past few years, and I really advocate to carry on your body. If an attack does occur, it's generally going to be within 21 feet, and it's next to impossible to dig some. I've seen the inside of women's purses. It's
Yes.
not an easy task to find something quickly. It's just not going to be a quick thing that you can grab. My personal favorite way to carry is with a belly band. You can use it for an open or a concealed carry, and it's very easy to do so. And that's what I generally recommend in my classes.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It definitely takes, you match your gun to your outfit. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about, you talk about women's purses. My wife will ask me to go get her keys out of her purse. It's an impossible task sometimes, but
Yes.
no, that's good, because I was always concerned about that, because I always heard that carrying in the purse was just generally a bad idea.
And that point was really driven home with me when I did some simulator training several months ago, and I knew something was going to happen, and I had the simulator gun on my hip, planning for something to happen, and it was almost all I could do to draw and stop the threat in the amount of time it takes a man with a knife to travel those 7 yards.
Yeah.
I was already carrying on my body at that point, but that just really emphasized how important it is to have it where you can grab it quickly, because those emergencies, which is why we are carrying anyway, you don't have time. You can't, ask the bad guy, hey, hold on just a second,
right.
I need to prepare myself. So I'm a big advocate of teaching women to carry on them all the time.
Yeah. Excuse me, bad guy, but I have to go. No, I'm not done. Would you like some chapstick? Oh, here's some.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to find my gun. No, I totally get it. Even carrying concealed for a guy in inner waistband is difficult, because now you have a shirt to deal with, and you have to lift the shirt, and sometimes your shirt can get caught and stuff like that. So it's still difficult.
It's important to practice. However you do carry, it's important to practice taking your gun out from that, whether it be an inside waistband holster, a belly band, with a winter coat, a jacket. It's important to practice for all those scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. All that stuff. Now, you girls, rather, I say guys, you know what I mean when I say guy, you guys.
Yeah.
You recently did something at the Capitol with
Yes.
Colonel Allen West. Can you tell us about
Yes.
that?
Oh, we did. It was just an awesome time. So Jan Morgan, our founder, she was invited to be a part of the Second Amendment Institute, and she was going out for their board meeting. So 4 of us from the 2A Women Board, we took a few days, went to Washington, D.C. We spent an entire day with Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. We walked the halls of Congress. We were able to stop and have conversations and really good meetings with several of our representatives. I know Representative Massey, Boebert, Miller, some of the really hard fighters for the Second Amendment. We had some great conversations with. And for me personally, it gave me just a spark of hope to realize that we do have some strong members in our Congress that are fighting for us every day. Of course, we saw some things that were very disheartening. We had some conversations in the hallways with people that do not support what we do, but we did see glimmers of hope. And so that it was just a very encouraging time, and just listening to the respect that these Congress men had for Lieutenant Colonel Allen West was just amazing. And he stated several things that were really important, of how important it is for us to go back to the local level. If we really want to make a change, we really need to focus on our local, all the way to school boards, city councils, and our state government to keep those going strong. So it was just a lot of good conversations, and realizing that we're not alone in this fight. And it's just encouraging for me to reach out to others and invite them to join us in protecting our Constitution and our Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, definitely. And now tell us what you think about some of our people in Congress. You say there were some of them that are really fighting for our rights. And I agree, Lauren Boebert,
Yes.
Jim Jordan, there are some good people. Who are some of the people that you think in Congress might be really beneficial and people to watch as we move forward?
I was very impressed with Representative Mary Miller out of Illinois. She has a fight really in front of her living in Illinois. They are so
Oh
anti-Second
yeah.
Amendment. Uh, she has, I think she said 5, 6, 7 children, and the kids were grown. Some of them started leaving the state because of the laws that they have and how anti-Second Amendment they are. So she and her husband both ran for office. He's at the state level, she's at the federal level, and she was just a great gal. She just, she thinks like you and I. She loves this country. She loves the Constitution, and she's working just extremely hard. So it was really nice having just a little face-to-face conversation with her and realizing what an advocate she is for us. Lauren Boebert, she is a spitfire. She was absolutely a joy to talk with and to realize, just while she may be small in stature, she's just big in personality. She just to watch her address the group that we were in and then having conversations with her, she's just a very encouraging lady. And so those are two of my favorites that I really enjoy watching just to see what they're doing.
Yeah, I like Lauren. She really is a spitfire. She is small. I saw pictures of her up next to
She
somebody
is.
else. You could put her in your pocket. I mean, she is tiny. She's a tiny woman.
And she was carrying. She was carrying again while I was with her as well, which I loved.
Oh, she is absolutely great. But yes, and I want to make the emphasis that your local, what you said, local fights are probably as important, if not more important, than the fights we have at the national level, because it all really happens at the state level. Like here in New York, we're getting killed. There's all sorts of nonsense going on with respect to our Second Amendment. Illinois, you mentioned Illinois, with they're pushing for their semi-automatic ban. They're pushing for ammo restrictions and all sorts of stuff, or magazine capacity rather. And they also included in their semi-automatic bill that once they deem your guns illegal, you now have to turn yourself into the government with a list of your newly illegal guns. So they're forcing people to incriminate themselves. It's just absolutely awful.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
So we watch New York, we watch Illinois, California, you name the other Democrat run cities, Connecticut, there's a whole bunch of them that we're keeping our eye on. But the good news is, and I'm sure you're aware, we have a new precedence set in Justice Clarence Thomas's opinion from the Bruin case, and that was those two beautiful words, historical tradition. Now that gun laws have to meet historical tradition, what do you think is going to happen as we move forward legislatively? Is it going to come into play?
Yeah, I'm optimistic that will play out. That especially the Supreme Court, that they will recognize cases based on the intent and the words of the Constitution, and that they don't try to legislate from the bench, which we've seen some of in the past. So very hopeful that we're going to see that. One of the people that I had the opportunity to meet when we were in DC was Dick Heller. And, he has just he's like the hero of gun rights, and what he has done, just one lawsuit after the other, just suing the state of Washington, DC, because he was allowed to carry a gun at his job, but not at home. So it just takes simple people, just regular people like me. And Dick Heller, he'll be the first to tell you he's just a regular guy, just speaking out and saying, hey, enough is enough. We have our Constitution. I personally believe it's one of the most brilliantly crafted documents ever written. We have our Bill of Rights, and those are rights that are guaranteed to us. It's something that government didn't give them to us, so government cannot take them away. So as long as we have court system that's basing their arguments and their decisions on those facts, I think we have a good hope.
Yeah, I always say, our Second Amendment is not a privilege. It's our right. And
It's a right. Yes.
they, a lot of these gun grabbers, they think that, I guess maybe they don't understand. Maybe they really don't understand how our country was founded. But many left-wingers in general, they don't seem to put the same value into the rights of American citizens as we do on the right, as conservatives or Republicans. I know our friend Jan Morgan always says it's not a government-issued privilege. The government doesn't give this to you. And I always say the difference between a privilege and a right is a privilege is man-made. It can be given and it can be taken away. And I use the example sometimes, I don't know if you have any kids, but when your kids didn't do their homework, they would lose the privilege of staying up past 9 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a privilege, and it's used for punishment sometimes. It's used to gain leverage over people, like your children. If you need leverage over your kids, you use privileges sometimes. A right is not like that. You can't do that with a right.
Right.
But they've turned it into, at least in their mind, into a privilege. And if they can convince society that rights are not God-given, that rights are man-made, government-issued, then our Constitution becomes null and void. I think part of it, and I want your opinion on this, but a big part of the problem, in my opinion, is helping people understand what rights really are. And go ahead, if you can talk on that for a minute.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one of the goals, the tenets of 2A Women is we want to be able to educate and enable and empower citizens to not only understand the laws, but to know what's going on in their particular state, how they can fight for it, and what they can do. I think what you said, there's too many people that don't understand the Constitution. I'm not sure if a lot of people have ever even read it and understand truly what a right is. And the media plays a big part in that. They've really dumbed down what we've been told. They try to tell us that it's the gun itself that's the problem, when a gun is just a tool. And it's used over 2 million times every year to save a life or to stop a crime. It's not going out on its own and committing crimes. So we need to look at what's causing the crime and addressing those issues versus addressing a tool. And then just making sure citizens understand what the laws are, what the rights are, and those bad laws. There's so many bad laws that we just need to get off the books. And the best way to do that, I believe, is on a state level.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up a thought, that a lot of the people don't understand how important rights are. And unfortunately, it would be too late when we say, see, we told you, we told you this would happen. But by that point, it'll be too late. We won't have any of our rights. And the anti-gun crowd, we talk about Every Town and Mom's Demand and the Brady campaign and all those other March for Our Lives and all those groups. I don't think they understand that what we're doing as Second Amendment advocates and constitutionalists is we are actually preserving their rights as well, and they just don't seem to know it. Because once, if and when the Second Amendment were to get, destroyed, completely destroyed, like they're trying to do, they wouldn't have any protection either. Don't they understand this? Why don't they get it? Can you answer that question?
I don't know.
Why don't
well,
they?
If we lose the Second Amendment, we're going to lose all the amendments. The Second Amendment is what's holding everything together. And all you have to do is look at history and what happened when citizens are disarmed, what happens in those countries. And, and so many kids, they don't understand our history. I don't know if history's not being taught in schools today or not. I'm not really sure. I homeschooled my girls, so we did talk about history. But if you don't have a Second Amendment, if you don't have a way to protect yourself, and there's so many stories, I could give you so many stories of people that were dependent upon the police to protect them. And I'm very pro police. I back the blue. And don't believe it is their fault, but they literally cannot be everywhere all the time. They cannot protect you every time you need help. And there's times when, say, a roaming gang comes to your door and does a coordinated home invasion, you don't have time to call the police.
No.
And if you are not able to protect yourself, you're just out of luck. So a lot of it, I think, is ignorance. It's listening to the media. It's not knowing history. It's not understanding really how vulnerable we are. And that's one of the goals of 2A Women, is just to help spread that education.
Yeah. No, definitely. Well, on to that. What are some of the legislative challenges that 2A Women is involved with or concerned with right now?
Well, right now we are working on growing our state's organizations. We're trying to build a group in every single state, because laws are different in every state. What's going through the legislature is different, and so we want a strong group built in each state, and that director then can get that information out to the people there. I'm of course in Arkansas, so I work and I'm very involved in what we have going on here. We work closely with gun owners of Arkansas. They're a lead gun rights organization here in the state, and most states, or many states, have a lead gun rights organization already fighting. And in that case, we just join with them. We love to back them up and give them what they need. If they need phone calls, if they need bodies at the Capitol, if they need an email campaign, whatever they need, we want to support that. So I know, like in Arkansas this last year, we just closed out, we had a good legislation, just simple things like there was not a definition of what is a loaded firearm. So you had one part of the state saying, okay, if there is a round in the chamber, that's a loaded gun. And then you might have another police officer saying, no, if you've got a mag in the gun, that's loaded. So we clarified that, even though we had open and concealed carry since 2013. But it was through case law. That was still very confusing for people. So we cleaned that up and made that a standalone law, which was signed by Governor Huckabee in May, and that just went into effect in August. So we are spending time here in Arkansas just cleaning up some of the gun laws, and it just depends on what's going on in each individual state. But we have Facebook groups for each and every state if anyone wants to join your state and see what's going on there. But we just think that the states' rights, building a strong states' rights organization, I think, is one of the best ways we have to ensure our freedom moving forward.
I was just thinking about something. You just brought it up. And I remember doing some research on which states are constitutional carry. And Arkansas didn't come up all the time. And I said, what the hell's going on here? Sometimes in some areas, I'm seeing Arkansas as a constitutional carry state, but then other places and other news outlets are saying it's not for some reason. It was really confusing. I called Jan, and Jan says, we are definitely a constitutional carry state. And she was actually, she made it known on social media. She was screaming that from the top of the mountain, and that Arkansas is definitely a constitutional carry state. But what was the confusion? I don't quite understand why there was such a confusion about Arkansas.
It wasn't a standalone law. It was borne out in the courts since 2013. There was some lawsuits that indicated that we were a constitutional or a permitless carry. And so because of that confusion, you could have, say, a state trooper on one side of the state or the other side of the state viewing it in a different way, or maybe they didn't realize about that court case. And we had some problems getting that information to come out of the Capitol at that time. So that was one of the laws that we ran through this year to make it a standalone. We are a permitless carry state. So now there are currently, I believe, 27 states where you can carry without a permit, and that will be growing this next legislative session. So hopefully that's cleaned up, and I just love seeing it added to more states every single year. It's just awesome.
Now, you will still have a carry license, right? You'll still.
Correct. Yes. And so as of right now, to have a concealed carry license, it speeds up a background check a bit if you're wanting to purchase a firearm, or if you are wanting to travel to another state that has reciprocity for your state, but they do not have a concealed or an open carry or permitless carry, then that allows you to carry in that state. But right now, like they say, there's 27 states that's going to recognize that. We do recommend that you check before you travel, you check the laws of every single state, because you need to know what the laws are. Some of them have, right to notify law enforcement or not. Maybe they require different ways that you carry a gun in a vehicle. So it's just important to do a little research and check and see what the laws are in every state before you travel.
Excellent. Absolutely. We are with Leah Herron, National President of 2A Women. We're going to take a short break, and I've got a lot more questions for Leah when we come back. Stick around.
Wake up.
HolsterGator, when seconds matter.
Discover Simul TV, a new streaming platform with over 100 channels of live stream content and video-on-demand movies, family-friendly shows to classic and blockbuster movies. Subscribe today and get so much for so little. Stream in harmony on simultv.com.
The media and politicians create terms like gun violence and ghost gun and assault weapon to change the narrative around guns in America. The entire anti-gun fear campaign is built on the reactive emotions of people who don't know any better. And the media seeks their support for gun restrictions. In Good Gun, Bad Guy, I give you the behind-the-scenes look into the mind of the anti-gun radical, because before we can defeat them, we need to understand their tactics. Good Gun, Bad Guy 2 exposes the media strategies used to create a perpetual state of irrational gun fear and hatred toward gun owners. Good Gun, Bad Guy 3 reveals the political motives behind the gun grab, why the left wants an unarmed population, and what we can do to thwart their efforts. The anti-Second Amendment radicals started this evil game. Good Gun, Bad Guy is the rule book they hoped you would never see. Go to goodgunbadguy.com to get your copy or purchase the entire series.
Thanks for joining us here on The Loaded Mic. We are back, and we are with Leah Herron, who's the national president for 2A Women. But before we get back to Leah, and I have a lot of great questions for her, I wanted to tell you about the HolsterGator. If you're not familiar with the HolsterGator, it's this really cool device. It attaches to your car, under your dashboard in your car, or your bed frame, or under your desk, or wherever you want your handgun for quick access. You simply clip your holster right into this device, no matter what brand holster you have. So rather than taking if you're getting in your car, rather than taking your gun out and putting it in your magnet and taking your holster out, maybe putting it on the passenger seat, your entire holster goes right into the HolsterGator, and you have trigger protection because you're drawing right from your holster. It's just absolutely a great device. Great people and very smart people who created this thing. It's a perfect device for traveling, and I just urge everybody to check this out at holstergator.com. Go to holstergator.com and make sure you use the discount code LOADED. You'll get 20% off just for knowing us here at the Loaded Mic. So 20% off holstergator.com. Use the discount code LOADED. So we are back with Leah Herron. And Leah, we were talking about something that's always really interesting to me, because I do a lot of traveling. And if you want to follow the law while you're traveling, it's not easy, because I come from New York, so I have to come all the way down the coast. Like, for instance, if I'm coming down to Arkansas, I have to go through some of those awful states. Jersey's the worst for traveling with a handgun. The rules are unbelievable. Some states you have to have to have it locked up in the case with the ammo separate. Sometimes you can have it in the glove box. Sometimes you've got to have it in the trunk of the car. It's just every state you have to be so careful. What are your thoughts on just a state-to-state reciprocity? Like a driver's license. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I like the idea. I know we have a lot of the deep blue states that aren't going to go for that. I mean, when you cross state line, you can still drive. You're still married. So I don't really like the fact that we have to go, by the laws in each state. It's different. But then again, I'm also a supporter of states' rights. So I see problems and I see positive things as well. Somehow over the last 30 years or so, we've managed to convince the population that it's federal, state, and local, when really, if you look at how the Constitution is written, states' rights, other than if it's not a specific something that has been granted to the federal government, it belongs to the states. And we're seeing the federal government has been trying to take over some of those things. So I do believe in states' rights, but I also don't believe that states should be able to have laws that directly go against anything in our Constitution, for example, the Bill of Rights. So I would personally like to see it simplified and easier because, and you really can't even, just because you take a vacation and you go through 5 states this year, doesn't mean you can take that same trip next year without double checking again, because laws are changing so fast and there's so many laws on the books, especially gun laws on the books. So it has to be checked out. So yeah, I would be all for that. Yeah.
And that's true. They do change. It's changing all the time. One thing that you made me think about when you were saying that is that the federal laws cannot override state laws, basically, in a basic premise, and yet state laws can possibly override federal but then you got the Constitution that's there to protect states from violating their citizens' rights too. So it's really interesting how it all works. But I agree. I mean, state rights are stand above and beyond. It's like, look at the abortion case, the Roe v. Wade thing. That went back to the states, and basically the states have their choice, right?
Right.
So yeah,
absolutely.
Go ahead. I'll let you go.
Well, and I kind of lost my train of thought right there, but it's just especially with the federal government now, with so many of, what we refer to as the alphabet agencies coming up with these guidelines or rules and trying to pass them off as if they are law, that's when it's getting really tricky and really confusing. Like, for example, the pistol brace ban that suddenly created, thousands of felons in the United States. And some of the states, like I know our state has passed a law that says any federal law that is passed after, I think it's 2021, that violates the Constitution, that Arkansas is not going to aid them. The feds cannot come in here and expect Arkansas to cooperate with enforcing laws that are not constitutional. So I think we're going to have some strong governors and some strong state legislators just standing up and saying, no, we're not going to allow this. And we're just seeing it too much, especially the ATF, and even the IRS. The IRS really recently said, I think it was 40 armed IRS agents raided a gun shop in Montana. I mean, first of all, why are 40 IRS agents armed to start with? And why were they raiding a gun shop? Supposedly they wanted some financial records, but they ended up taking absolutely everything that was in there. So we're just seeing a lot of conflicting news, a lot of information, a lot of bad things are happening in the name of safety, and it's violating our constitutional rights.
Well, you brought up a perfect scenario, and that we were just talking about that last week on the show, and I wrote an article if people are interested in Ammo Land about that, about the IRS coming into that gun shop in Montana. And you're right. They came in under the guise of financial records, but they ended up taking 4473s. And those forms have gun purchasers' personal information: name, address, social security number, date of birth, location of birth, gender, all sorts of personal information that the government shouldn't have. And I always look at that like, what the hell are they doing, taking that information? It's the IRS. Aren't they supposed to be looking at financial stuff? What are they doing going in there and confiscating all this stuff? They stayed in that gun shop all day until a half hour before closing time, occupied the place, and they were armed. You're right. They were heavily armed. Yeah. This is not the way this is supposed to work. Our founding fathers would be infuriated over this stuff.
Well, and we should be infuriated. More of us should be infuriated. I know there's so, every day you get up and you think nothing could possibly be worse than what I saw yesterday, and yet we continue seeing it. At some point, we the people are going to have to get loud, and we're going to have to start speaking out and saying, hey, we demand that our Constitution be followed, and we demand accountability, and we want to know what's going on. Why are we hiring all these extra agents? Why are we arming all these alphabet agencies? Why is the government buying huge amounts of ammunition? There's just a lot of questions that we need to stop, lurking in the corners. We need to step out and demand some accountability and let our legislators know we're not going to stand for this anymore. We are going to start fighting for our rights, and we need to start voting people out if they're not doing the job. And we just need a lot more people to jump in on the fight and help us get rid of these bad politicians and these bad policies.
Yeah, and I agree. And the great thing, the good news is we have organizations that are fighting for our Second Amendment right. We have Gun Owners of America, which I happen to be fond of. I'm also involved with them. Second Amendment Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition, 2A Women, and I mean there are several others. And so what I always recommend is that people will sign up with their national, with one or two national gun rights organizations, but don't forget to get signed up with your state's group, because every state has a gun rights organization. I know you guys have in Arkansas, you have one, but we were also, when I was spending more time down that way, down in Arkansas, we were also connected with the guys from Bama Carry in Alabama, another great group. So get involved with your state rights groups, because they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, right?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I wanted to ask you, getting back to, because I wanted to devote more of this toward women and firearms, because the ladies that are watching, might have questions, and I'm hoping that I'm asking the right questions. But what are some of the trends that you're noticing with female gun owners? I mean, whether it's, why they're getting in, or what types of firearms are they choosing? What are some of their concerns when they start carrying for the first time? If you could talk on that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm also a certified firearms instructor, and I've noticed that women are just kind of crawling out of the woodwork wanting lessons. They want to be trained. They realize that they just don't want to buy a gun, bring it home and set it on a shelf, that they want to learn how to use it and to use it safely. And we very much promote being responsible gun owners. We believe it's very important to know how to safely use a firearm. It goes way beyond just purchasing that gun. I think a perfect example is a lady that I just recently taught in class. A friend of hers actually called me. This lady was at home watching TV with her children. They were older, like a teenager and a 20-something year old child. Her husband was gone. They had all left the living room and were back in the bedrooms or something. And she heard a loud noise. Someone literally broke into her front door. The front door was locked, but they just invaded the house. We believe it was probably a robbery attempt gone bad, because when she came out of the bedroom, because she had heard this noise, and he saw her, he fled. So we don't think it was an attempt to harm her. We think it was just an invasion gone bad. And up until that, she can amendment, but she didn't see any reason whatsoever to own a gun herself. And that event scared her to death. So she was sharing that with someone at work who said, hey, I know someone that teaches. They put together a group of 8 ladies from this business. I spent a Sunday afternoon training them, teaching them kind of how to know if a gun fits. In fact, a question I get a lot is, what's a good gun for a female? Well, it's hard to say because we all have different size hands, and it's important to have a gun that fits your hand. You need to be able to operate, there's the safety, the mag release with your thumb on your shooting hand. So, we can recommend some guns, but it's a good idea just to get into a gun shop and have someone help you try on, so to speak, several guns. But I just feel like people are waking up to the fact that we're not living in a very safe world right now, and it's very important to be able to protect yourself and your children. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's irresponsible. If you're a mother and you do not have a way to protect your children, I don't believe that's a responsible action. I believe it's very important that you arm yourself responsibly, that you know how to use that gun. And we're just seeing, I'm not advertising for classes at all, and I don't have any problems getting students for my classes. Women are wanting to be trained.
I absolutely agree. I'm glad you said that because you said you'd go so far as to say it's irresponsible for not protecting yourself and your family. I absolutely agree. And it's the narrative around guns has gone so far to the left that we find ourselves defending ourselves and justifying our reason for carrying a gun and saying, no, please understand me. The reason I carry a gun is because of this, this, and this. We don't have to answer to anybody. We don't have to justify ourselves. You said it perfectly. It's irresponsible if you don't. And I think if we can get that conversation going back around in that direction, I think people understand, because people are there's 1.25 million violent acts per year in America. Over 1 million violent acts every year in America. And that's only the ones we know about. There's only 300 and some million people. So if you do the math, you've got like a 1 in 275 chance, or even less than that. Maybe it's 1 in 175. I can't quite remember, but you've got a very high chance of being the victim of one of those violent attacks. And to think that we have to defend ourselves verbally against our fellow citizens who want to disarm us, it's absolutely astonishing to me that there are people who think like that. I can't. I was just real quick story. have a friend old friend who kind of an anti-gunner. I don't really talk to him much anymore, but I said, what would you do if someone broke into your house and wanted to attack your family? And he said, well, I'd sit, now this is a left-winger, non-gun owner, anti-gunner. He said, well, I'd sit him down and have a conversation with him. I'm like, really? The guy's coming in your house, you're going to have a conversation with him. This is the mentality. I mean, what can you tell us about the mentality of the anti-gun crowd, and what do we need to do to kind of help them understand?
I don't know. They really seem to be out of touch. I don't understand. In fact, a lot of the people that are promoting this anti-gun mentality, they have bodyguards. They've got people with them protecting them, and they want to take my right away to do what they're paying someone to do. And unfortunately, too many people are just listening to mainstream news, and they're listening that, guns are dangerous, guns are scary, guns are the problem, when all you have to do is look at what's happening. It's the gun-free zones where these crimes are occurring. It's illegally gotten guns the majority of the time. If you look at a lot of, say, mass shooters, for instance, you're dealing with psychotic people, most of them on drugs or medication. So while we consistently look at the gun as the evil part when actually it's what can save us. It's a protection for us. And for example, my youngest daughter, and she's not against guns, she shoots as well, but I generally carry open. And she's not quite sure she likes me carrying it open. And I said, I may just be one person, but my job, I'm trying to change the gun culture. I want to normalize everyday law-abiding citizen carrying a gun. I pray to God that I never, ever have to use it. I do not have any intention of ever using it in a crime or in a bad manner. But if I need to protect myself or my family or my friends, I've got that ability to do so. So I just think it's time that we normalize that it's okay for law-abiding citizens to have a weapon and a way to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And Leah, I have a whole list of more questions that I could ask you and that we could talk about, but we're out of time. Next, we got to have you on again because this conversation, there's so much more to talk about. But next time we got to get your friend Jan on here with you. So where can people find you, Leah, before we get cut off here?
Well, our website is 2awomen.org, or we're most active on Facebook, which is just 2A Women, or just put a / in your state after 2A Women to find your particular state group.
Leah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you. We'll talk real soon. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching The Loaded Mic on Rumble. You can also catch us on OpsLens, Simul TV, Right America Media, and the Key Radio Network. For the podcast, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. I'm Dan Wass, and the Second Amendment is not a privilege, it's your right.